Despite all of the drama surrounding the game industry this year, 2025 has been a pretty amazing year for video games. The last few months in particular have seen a ton of big releases, including the hotly anticipated release of Hollow Knight Silksong, a game people have been waiting the better half of a decade for. The Trails in the Sky remake, Ghost of Yotei, and the full release of Hades 2 have all released to massive critical acclaim. And while not every one of these games is going to be in the contending for Game of the Year, it's certainly going to be a rough debate. Instead of playing any of these games, however, I spent most of October playing Digimon Story: Time Stranger. As a monster taming JRPG, it's certainly a game with a much lower profile than many of the other big names released in the last couple of months. Having said that, I have a pretty strong attachment to Digimon, and considering I'd mentioned the game earlier this year in a video about it, there was no way I wasn't going to jump into it right away. Digimon is a franchise that's been struggling a bit in the West, and while Time Stranger isn't going to make it a household name, it's certainly done a lot to turn a lot of people's opinions around, and it did so without really changing the core formula of what a Digimon game is. And I mean it. Time Stranger is fundamentally no different from your usual Digimon JRPG. Its immediate predecessor was the Cyber Sleuth duology, and if you've played that game, you're not going to be surprised by what Time Stranger has to offer you. You put together a team of Digimon and raise them however you like. You explore dungeons, fighting and obtaining Digimon all the while, as you experience a story all about friendship and the complexity of human-Digimon relations. There's certainly differences, obviously, but at its core, the formula that made Cyber Sleuth such a good game is still largely present in Time Stranger. What makes Time Stranger stand out in a way that the Cyber Sleuth games couldn't is honestly the game's level of polish and presentation. The Cyber Sleuth games were great, but there's no denying that they were low budget. I have no complaints about the Digimon models or the gameplay systems, but the dungeons were boring and the game just had a clear lack of quality control. As such, even though Cyber Sleuth did manage to get a bit of attention and critical praise, it lacked the kind of mainstream appeal that would have made it much more popular. Time Stranger, however, has no such problems. Bandai Namco clearly put a lot more money into the game this time around, and despite it spending nearly 10 years in development hell, it still managed to come out as an incredibly well-polished, high-quality game. The boring monocolored dungeons of Cyber Sleuth gave way to intricately designed environments and big explorable areas, and the UI and general presentation of the game is just absolutely fantastic. It's a refined version of what I always wanted Cyber Sleuth to be, and that's all it really needed to be truly great. There's even an English dub, which is fine. I personally did not mind Cyber Sleuth being only voiced in Japanese, but at the very least, Bandai Namco springing for an English dub at all is evidence that they were willing to put the money into making this game good. Now obviously, Time Stranger has brought quite a few improvements to the Digimon JRPG formula, mostly quality of life changes that make the whole experience smoother. In Cyber Sleuth, for one, you could only have up to 11 Digimon with you at all times, though you could freely swap them in during battle. Time Stranger lets you have all of your Digimon with you, but only 6 that can actually be used in combat. That sounds a little restrictive, but what helps here is that even if they don't partake in a fight, all of your Digimon are still going to gain experience, which eases the grind that the last Digimon games had. There's also a regeneration mode where you can completely heal your Digimon just by standing still, meaning you can go all out for every fight, no matter what. There are also lots of new features like cross arts, Digiride, and the revamped personality system, which all help to keep the game from feeling too much like another Cyber Sleuth. Of course, Time Stranger isn't perfect, and it does have its pitfalls. Most of these are little nitpicks honestly, but one more significant flaw would be the loss of the Digifarm's utility. In Cyber Sleuth, it was a place where your unused Digimon could still grow and collect materials even if they weren't in the party. However, because Time Stranger lets you take all of your Digimon with you at all times, there aren't a lot of reasons to be leaving them in the farm. There's still some utility, but considering how much time I spent in Cyber Sleuth's Digifarm, Time Stranger's iteration almost feels like a half-baked inclusion. Despite this, I still consider Time Stranger to be the definitive Digimon experience, and the best game in the franchise for sure. Of course, Time Stranger is still a JRPG centered around a niche franchise, so even if it was the best game to come out this year, I didn't expect that many people to be interested in playing it, especially with the bizarrely high price point of $69.99 USD. I've never been more happy to be wrong, however, as Time Stranger has turned out to be quite successful. Very successful, in fact. No, it's not blockbuster numbers, and it doesn't compare to the kind of numbers AAA games tend to put out, but it is impressive for Digimon's track record, and it's getting a lot of new people to engage in the franchise. And honestly, that might be Time Stranger's biggest victory. Ever since the game came out, I've been constantly seeing videos of people getting into the Digimon series with Time Stranger for the very first time. If you're a Digimon fan, you have to be excited about that. Whether it be the creative designs, the surprisingly deep raising mechanics, or the incredibly fun combat system, Time Stranger is doing what no other Digimon game has been able to do for years: leave an impact. Now, at the end of the day, I still don't expect to see Digimon Story Time Stranger as one of the nominees for Game of the Year. Niche is niche, and while Time Stranger is doing a lot to hold the franchise up, I think it's still pretty far from hitting the mainstream. I also think that Digimon is still far away from reaching the heights that Pokemon has because, let's be honest, no matter how many people complain about it, there's still going to be a ton of fans buying the newest Pokemon game. Time Stranger's doing well right now, but how many new fans will be up for buying the next Digimon game? Only time will tell. Of course, none of that really matters right now. What really matters is that the game is getting people to jump into Digimon again, and while that doesn't necessarily mean that the franchise is going to hit some kind of silver age, I'm glad to see the franchise's fortunes trend upwards for once. It would be great if Time Stranger is able to have the effect that Yakuza 0 and Persona 5 had for their franchises, but for now, I'm just happy Digimon finally has a game that is truly, unequivocally great. Thanks for watching. Time Stranger isn't the best game to come out of 2025, but it sure makes a good run for it. If you've played the game, let me know what you thought of it in the comments below, and if it's made you a Digimon fan. I'd love to hear what everyone's thought of it. Subscribe if you want to catch what I've got coming up next, and I'll see you next time.